Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Just so I know who's in the room, where are the moms and dads? You are a parent here. Raise your hand. We're all tired. Like, ugh. I'm so excited to be speaking to people who are out of puberty today. You have no idea how much that fires me up. Where are the grandparents, the special people in the room? Can we give grandparents a giant round of applause? Amazing. Amazing. If you're in middle school, would you raise your hand? I see one guy. There are a couple, okay. We just want you to know we would never trade places with you because middle school is such a difficult time and you know it. It's awkward and you know it, okay? But you are, where are the high school students? High school students, where are you? Okay, y'all are not very excited about that. This may be, if you're about to graduate from high school, where are you? A couple. Amazing. Congratulations on finishing the easiest part of your life. That is incredible. Here's what I would love for us to do this morning, because in case you do not know, we obviously live in a really interesting cultural moment in the United States of America, but I would propose that maybe the thing that is at the most risk is trust. It may be the thing that is the most risky. So here's what I would love for us to do. I would love for us to determine where we are on the trust scale if we could. So here's what I'm going to do in just a second. I'm going to reintroduce Sean. No, what I'm going to do is I want you to think about these four things, and you have to choose which one you trust the most. And in just a second, I'm going to call out these things one at a time, and you can only vote once, okay? We can only vote once, and you have to clap for the one of these things that you trust the most, okay? Everybody got your one? We don't need ballot issues, okay? Just one clap, all right? Who in the room you trust of these four, Uber, Facebook, CNN, and Amazon, you trust Uber the most? That was not very powerful, but we appreciate you playing. You guys have this in Dallas. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. You guys now have Waymo, the automated Uber without a driver. The first time I took Waymo, by the way, it's an amazing experience. I took a video from the back seat of an empty driver's seat as I'm going down the road, and I sent that video to my father-in-law and told him the rapture happened. And then I told him, if you're seeing this, you got left. But, okay, there weren't a lot of Ubers. Facebook. Exactly, it's a dumpster fire. Nobody should trust Facebook. Okay? CNN. Welcome to the Republican National Convention, ladies and gentlemen. There was one brave soul in the first service, and I'm like, Democrat. All right, so, Amazon. Here's what's interesting to me about Amazon. We don't really know why we trust Amazon. Maybe you're just going, of the four, it's the only one I trust. But what's interesting is we don't know about hiring practices. We don't know about ethics. If we get really honest, we just know we ordered it on Friday and it's on our porch on Saturday. And sometimes you hear them walking up in the middle of the night. Now, here's why this is important. As we wrestle with this, for those of you that may not know, these are considered the 9 institutions in the United States of America. By the way, with the most recent data, I ordered these in the order of those that are the most trusted to the least. And in case you care, 20 years ago, the United States of America, of all the G7 countries, its citizens said that we trust the institutions in the United States of America the most. That was 20 years ago. Today, of all of the G7 countries, we're the least trusting. And here's why that should rattle a ton of us in this room, because, ladies and gentlemen, the next generation is looking at you and I think the question they are asking more than anything else is, can I trust you? Can I trust you? And here's a heads up for those of us that don't know, for all of us in this room who are adults. The teenagers and the middle schoolers, the high schoolers, the elementary age children that you're raising, although we are all the same, born, created in the Imago Dei, in the image of God, the Tselem, the shadow of God, the time that they live in is completely different than most of us grew up in. Theirs is a foundation of instability. These are the markers of the next two generations. If you are the parent of a child that was born between 97 and 2012, you are parenting a Gen Zer. If your child is born between 2010 and 2024, you are parenting Generation Alpha. These are the markers that the social science experts in our country have considered to be the consistent things about the next generation. The next generation, in case you care, is considered, in Generation Z, they're considered the loneliest generation in the history of our country. We are in an anxiety and mental health pandemic with the next generation, ladies and gentlemen. Our youngest daughter played soccer at the University of Florida. Her last year there, I had a conversation with one of her coaches. University of Florida is 47,000 students. They have 6 full-time therapists on campus, and those 6 therapists had a 3 to 4 month waiting list to speak to college students. Part of the reason why they're so anxious and there's a mental health crisis because they are so Wi-Fi enabled. Our children have never not known a time when there has not been the internet and Wi-Fi and smartphones. It's the reason why, adults, you go to them when there are technical issues. You are the immigrant. They are the natives. They're the most multiracial generation in the history of the United States. The U.S. Census tells us by the year 2045 in the United States of America, if you're Caucasian in the room, you will be the minority. In the state of Georgia where I live, that date is 2030. In the city of Atlanta where I live, we've passed it. They're the most sexually fluid generation in the history of America. We could say a ton of things about that, but here's what I would slide across the table to everybody in the room. On the other side of your view, sir, ma'am, is a who? Is a kid. They're the first post-Christian generation in the history of the United States. They're the most self-directed generation in the history of our country. They're the most underprotected from the virtual world. They're the most overprotected from the real world. Jonathan Haidt, the author of The Anxious Generation, says that our greatest disservice, adults in the room, to the next generation is we have overprotected them from the real world and we have underprotected them from the virtual world. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and some of you saw this news about a year ago. A mom was arrested in Fannin County, Georgia, because she let her middle school age child walk less than a mile to Dollar General and back, and a neighbor called protective services on her. My parents didn't know where I was most of the time. I'm angry at myself that I did not take more advantage of that. But that's a whole other thing. And by the way, Generation Z's parents, our 3 young adult children are Gen Zers. We are, my generation of parents of Gen Z, we are the first generation that is not looking forward to, and we are fighting everything we can to not grow old. My parents could not wait to have kids, grandkids, rocking chair, die. It was like their goal. We're doing everything we can to not grow old. Thus this haircut and this outfit. But that's a whole other thing. So they're growing older, younger. And then, such a sex-saturated culture because pornography now is in the palm of their hand. And the reaction, we don't have a ton of data on Gen Alpha, but you can see some of the reactions to this generation. Family anchored, home centered, judgment averse, spiritually open. They are so spiritually open, but they are institutionally skeptical. Hybrid faith practitioners, post-pandemic shaped. We could just put pandemic in all of this. Mentally burdened. And they want they want somebody to lead them. And that is different from so many of us in this room who consider ourselves adults. This is a playground from 1911. Every mother in the room just hyperventilated. I don't know if anybody else grew up this way, teenage. I am not that dude that's like, when I was, that's not me. But I did grow up this way. This dude is my hero. You have no idea if there are exposed box springs, what he's going to land on. And has anybody else ever gotten slung off one of these? There are students going, what is that? All right, right? And I don't know if you guys have ever taken, adults, have you ever taken a step back and thought, you know what? I never drank water out of a bottle. I drank out of this bad boy. Did anybody else, teenagers, talk amongst yourselves. We're having revival, all right? Anybody else grow up in, my dad, we played this crazy game when I was growing up. What was it called? Oh, outside. My dad would go play outside. And then he would lock the door. And this is the only way we survived. And if we're not careful, we will raise a generation to live in a world that no longer exists. So what do we do with that? I think we have to wrestle with this word. Trust. Someone has wisely said that trust is like the super glue, the currency of relationships. And you are either sitting in this room as an adult, rich or bankrupt with trust. You as a church have to make up your mind. Do we want to be rich in trust as it relates to the next generation? Or will we be bankrupt? Can they? This is a hard thing for us to wrestle with. But can the students of this greater area, can they trust you? Can your children trust you, mom and dad? Do they trust you, small group leader? And for those of us in this room that are just sitting on the periphery going, somebody else will mentor or disciple or lead a small group, if you are trustworthy, why is it that you won't get in and lead? Because they desperately are going, will someone lead me? Now, what's interesting is you and I are not the first people who have wrestled with this issue of trust. In fact, if you brought your Bible this morning and would like to turn here, you can. Exodus chapter 32. I want us to look at a story, regardless of where you are in your spiritual journey. You'll know this story. You've heard of this journey in some way, shape, or form. It's the story of the people of Israel and their exodus from enslavement in Egypt. What's interesting about this story, though, is that most of us don't know its history. I have a very dear friend who last year said these words to me, and I haven't forgotten it. It's haunted me. He said, bad historians make horrible theologians, even worse politicians, and inept parents and leaders. Bad historians make horrible theologians, and more so, inept parents and leaders. We need to know our history so that we can frame God correctly. So here's the history for those of you that don't know about this historical story, this exodus of the people of Israel out of bondage, out of slavery in Egypt. It happened somewhere in this vicinity before the Common Era in 1446 to 1250. That's when this incident happened, most historians believe. Now, what's interesting, though, is that up until this time, this happened, by the way, after Israelites had been taken into captivity by Babylon and then exiled back to Jerusalem, they started going, you know what? Our children don't know our story. Up until this time, this had been an oral tradition. So then they start writing it down. So think about this. The book of Exodus is written somewhere between 700 to 900 years after it actually happened. But that gives you a framework of what we're dealing with here. Here's some details about what was happening as a part of that enslavement. What we know to be true is that the people of Israel to Egypt were enslaved for about 430 years, okay? Some of you teenagers, you kind of think of this as being in your house. You're like, I don't have any freedom, all right? People of Israel for 430 years are enslaved in Egypt. And then there's 1 year where there's at least 10 plagues. God is getting their attention. He's trying to help the people of Israel understand, I am here for you, and there is freedom coming. He selects this guy named Moses to go to Pharaoh, and these 10 plagues are corresponding with Moses having a conversation, and eventually Pharaoh says, get out. Just like every parent of you guys, teenagers, at one point is going to go, get out. All right, they want you out. Those of you that are graduating, yay, they're just as happy you're leaving. All right, so, because watch this. The hardest part about isn't this true, parents? The hardest part about being a parent is you. You're the hard part. So, the people of Israel, they get out. They begin to leave. And the estimate is 1 to 2 million people begin to leave Egypt and follow this guy named Moses. Now, history tells us that there's probably 3 to 3.5 months after they're released. Keep in mind, they've watched 10 plagues. They've watched they've experienced 10 plagues. They've experienced the Passover. They've experienced the Red Sea. They've experienced Moses taking a stick, hitting a rock, and water going everywhere. And this is something that we miss. Everybody, they did not leave Egypt empty-handed. We miss this often. But Moses, at some point, as they're getting ready to leave, says to the Israelites, go to the Egyptians and ask them for their silver and gold. And the story tells us that they start going to the Egyptians, and the way that the scriptures tell it is that the Egyptians were favorably disposed toward the people. We don't know why. It could be just get out and here's all my stuff. It could be, we are so grateful for your investment in us, and here's a gift. But the scriptures tell us that they plundered the Egyptians. That's important because now they have all of this gold, all of this silver. Remember, they've been enslaved for 430 years. And if you're paying attention when you read these stories, you have to ask yourself, how did people who were enslaved have gold and silver? Well, the reason why is because they plundered the Egyptians. The Egyptians were like, here. But watch this. This is so incredibly important. God had a plan for it. He had a plan for the gold. Watch this, students in the room. You have incredible gifting, and you've got your future, and you've got passionate, and you want to. God has a plan for that gold. Watch this, mom and dad. You have status, and you have wealth, and you have influence, and you have position. Heads up, adults in the room. God has a plan for that gold. And here's what happens to the people of Israel. The plan for the gold, you can read this in chapter 19 until 32. The plan for the gold is eventually they were going to build the Ark of the Covenant that would house the presence of God. They were going to build a tabernacle, and they were supposed to use the gold for the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God, the tabernacle where they would meet with God. Moses, they get to Mount Sinai. Moses goes up on the mountain to hear from God, for God to tell him what he's supposed to do with all this gold and silver. And the people of Israel are gathered at the base of that mountain. And guess what happens? Moses doesn't come down quick enough. He doesn't come down quick enough. Isn't it interesting when you live in a culture or you live in a time where things to be happening like, isn't this what it's like, teenagers? You can get an answer like this. It's the best part about smartphones. You don't have to wait. And now we have AI, and you don't even know if it's real. But you can get an answer like this. In fact, some of you, even right now, I'm talking all this history, and you're looking like, I don't know. I need to fact check this dude. Is this right? And Moses doesn't come down immediately. And guess what happens? The people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain. Isn't it amazing what happens when we get impatient? When he's so long on the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and they said, come, make us gods who will go before us. These are the same people. Plagues, Passover, Red Sea, even God going, I'm going to give you favor with the Egyptians and they're going to give you their gold. Make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses, parents, if you want to know the tough part about being a parent, as for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. Sounds like every teenager talking about their mom and dad. Because when they were kids, you were the greatest thing in the world. And then they became 16 and they suddenly know everything. We don't know what's happened to him. So what does Aaron do? Aaron, by the way, is Moses' brother. He answers them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me. So all the people took off their earrings and they brought them to Aaron, and he took what they handed him and he made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, of a cow, fashioning it with a tool. And then they said, these are your gods, Israel, brought you out of Egypt. We have a tendency to hear this story and we think that the people of Israel, 3 to 3.5 months into this journey, suddenly stopped believing in God. Hey, everybody. They didn't create a golden calf because of atheism. They created it because of impatience. Watch this, high school graduate. It's the same thing that happens your freshman year on campus. Oh, you are committed when you leave because you've had this incredible place and incredible parents that invested. You know what, adults? I'm actually explaining most of our freshman years. Because most of us in this room, you had somebody pouring into you. And then you got to your freshman year, and it wasn't happening as quickly as you thought it should. And what happens? You get impatient. And by the way, the success sequence in the United States of America is broken. And so consequently, the next generation is feeling more angst because it doesn't seem to be happening so quickly. And the people of Israel are not that much different from people so much more modernized and with so much more information. They didn't stop trusting God. They just stopped trusting his timing. It's a temptation for all of us in this room. Because watch this. We can't stand the silence. Why is he not acting quicker? Isn't it interesting how we equate speed and quickness with belief and faithfulness? We think belief and faithfulness equals speed and quickness. And I would propose that it's actually the opposite. Because God wants to know, who are you trusting? Who are you trusting? By the way, Moses eventually came down the mountain. Can you get this in your mind? He comes down the mountain. And first of all, you talk about a tough Thanksgiving for Aaron and Moses. It's his brother who's made a golden calf. And he's seeing these people worship this idol. And this is often missed on us. But what did Moses do? He took the calf, the idol that the people had made, and he burned it in a fire, and then he ground it into powder, and he scattered it on the water, and he made the Israelites drink it. Psst. Because you and I are always going to choke on our idols. It's the reason why some of you are here, right? That thing that you built, that you thought would replace, would be in lieu of the silence. Now you're choking on it. It's consumed you. And if I could say something to every teenager in the room, you are living at a time in a cultural moment where you have more gold than the adults in your life ever thought about having. I'm not talking about material wealth. I'm talking about information. And you are the most educated generation in the history of America. So many of you in this room have so many gifts. Artists, athletes with so much influence. brilliance, intelligence. And if you're not careful, you will be tempted when it's silent and not moving quick enough to take your gold that God has a plan for and build something He never made you to build. And here's how I know that's true. Because we as adults did the same exact thing. Because we thought and we think that if I can't touch it, feel it, smell it, test it, that it doesn't exist. And if we think on the God radar, He just goes missing, that He's not there. Heads up, everybody. God does not give you and I GPS. He gives us presence. He gives us presence. Because He wants you to trust Him. Some of you may have seen this movie, I think it was 2 years ago, this movie Conclave. It was about the reselection of a new pope in the Catholic Church. And one of the cardinals, Cardinal Lawrence in this movie, he gives a speech to all the bishops and cardinals as they're about to go into conclave and choose the new pope with the black smoke and all that kind of stuff. And he made this speech, and I have it written in, and I see it all the time in my office. Because here's what he says to these men who are very versed in what it means to follow God. He says to them, our faith is a living thing precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt. Can we be family for just a second, even though I just met some of you? How many of you be honest and say, there are some times where I've doubted? Raise your hand high. Look around. Bunch of doubters. It's all of us. And Cardinal Lawrence says, our faith is a living thing because it walks hand in hand with doubt. If there was only certainty, there would be no doubt. And there would be no mystery. And you and I wouldn't have to have faith. Hand in hand with doubt. Teenagers, hand in hand with doubt. Adults, you and I being a figure they can trust when they can't trust anything else. Because here's the temptation for every teenager in the room. This is the world that you live in. Your temptation is to build a statue around status. Because that's what social media does. Social media, everybody, is a full-time job on status. And you fill all of your time and all of your energy making sure that everybody else sees your highlight reel. They don't know the behind the scenes. And this is exhausting. And heads up, adults in the room, many teenagers are learning this practice from adults. It's interesting to me that a teenager spends a ton of time on social media and we call it addiction. Adults spend a lot of time on social media and we call it branding. But it's really about status or hustle. We've equated grinding with godliness. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with you hustling. You're looking at somebody, I understand the value of hustle. But watch, if you're not careful, you will hustle yourself into a frenzy and you can't hear God. Because there's so much noise. And then the comfort is what happens at the bottom of the mountain. It's the reason why a ton of us in this room, we are tempted to numb ourselves with who knows what. Because we can't stand being uncomfortable. And so there are those of us in this room, you sit here this morning and you know the greatest temptation of your life is when you hear your own thoughts to numb yourself. Or to just perform your way through life. That's an idol, by the way. Because I don't know any of you very well at all, but I would dare say that for some of you, it was World War III in the car on the way here. And then you got here and it's like, hallelujah, how you doing? I mean, you start acting. In the car, it was like, shut up. And here it's like, it's an idol. Teenagers, are you tempted to build this golden calf? And part of the reason why you're tempted, watch this, adults, Adults in the room, we go, why won't the next generation just trust the truth? Sean mentioned it, almost 40 years of doing this, teenagers have no problem with the truth. They are willing to trust it. They just don't trust the bridge. Psst. And we're the bridge. They don't trust the bridge. So if I may quickly, to every adult in this room, would you be willing to be someone in a teenager's life who names what God is building in them before they even see it in themselves? Hey, dads in the room, would you be a vision caster for your son and daughter? Would you see the best in them instead of the worst in them? Because your teenager moms and dads are not problems to be solved. They are people to be loved. And they need someone a little bit wiser, a little bit older to go, I see gold in you. I see gold in you. Would you be willing to be someone who invests time with no agenda, not to fix them, not to correct them, but to just see them? There is a teenager in the greater DFW Metroplex that is just waiting for someone a little bit older than them to look at them and go, I see you. You do not walk by me and I don't recognize. I see you. Would you be willing to be someone who tells them the truth, even when it costs you their approval? And for every parent in the room, this is our job, not to be their best friend, but to be their leader. If you're the parent of young adult children, I would dare say our children are young adults. It's harder to raise young adult children than teenagers, I think. Just yesterday, our youngest daughter said something about me, and I was just like, thank you for Jesus. I mean, it was... But here's what I know to be true. My responsibility with her is to be her leader and her dad, not to be her best friend. She has plenty of those. And sometimes that means, parents, you and I are not popular. And it's also the reason why you need small group leaders in your teenagers' lives that can come along beside you and echo what you're saying. But the next generation desperately needs someone who will tell them the truth, even when it costs their approval. And would you be willing to be someone who shows them what it looks like to wait on God when it's quiet? Because watch, they learn the habit of building idols from us. They learn the habit of building idols from us. Students, you are free not to know everything. Some of you are like, seriously? You are free not to know everything. You can rest in the mystery. God sees your doubts as sacred. God is not going anywhere when you doubt. It's not a threat to your faith. In fact, I would propose that doubt is faith finally taking off its mask. And Stuart, how can we do this? Because our anchor holds. Our anchor holds. I'll leave you with this. Last 2 years, my wife's and I's life, without me going into too much detail, it's been hellacious to say the least. And about a year ago, we just needed to come up for air. And most of the tension that we felt had everything to do with the cultural moment that you and I are living in, with a lack of trust in institutions. We just needed some air. So we decided to go to New York City where you could just disappear. There are millions of people there. We were there on St. Patrick's Day weekend. I buy us tickets to the Broadway play, The Outsiders. Anybody read the book, The Outsiders, when you're not in high school? For those of you that don't know, The Outsiders is now a Tony Award-winning play, 4 Tony Awards. It's amazing. So I get us amazing tickets. And when we sit down at The Outsiders, this is my wife, Kelly, we sit down beside Trenton. Trenton is from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and he was there with 300 of his high school classmates / bandmates. They were there to march in the St. Patrick's Day parade. Trenton sits down beside my wife, and this is just who I see. Trenton, I see teenager. I'm like, dude, tell me about you. I just start, badgering him with questions. Trenton, talk to me. I'm going to force you to talk to me. Trenton, where are you from? Green Bay, Wisconsin. Why are you in New York City? I'm in the band. I look around and I realize He has 300 of his classmates and bandmates in the play, and none of them are closer to 3 or 4 rows from him. He's sitting by himself on our row. Trenton, what do you think about New York City so far? It's crowded. What do you want to do while you're here? I just want to have fun and eat good food. And I'm like, cool. Have you ever read the book? No. Which, by the way, adults, we can always hold that over the next generation, okay? If they're like, hey, fix my phone, I'm like, write in cursive. You know, that kind of thing. Read a whole book, you know. I'm like, Trenton, this play is going to be unbelievable. So the play starts. And I'm a dumb jock, played basketball in college years ago. I'm bawling through the first act. It is so powerful. I look over at Trenton. One time he showed some emotion. He went. Intermission comes. My wife goes to the bathroom. I stood up, and Trenton walks out in the aisle. I said, Trenton, what do you think? He goes, it's so mid. That's the first thing he said to me. Translation, adults, that means average, okay? It's so mid. I should have done this, but I took Trenton by the shoulders and I'm like, bro, if you're not careful, you're going to miss all of this beauty in front of you. Because there is a story playing out in front of you that will change your life if you'll pay attention. Yeah, maybe. Second act starts. I'm not exaggerating. Trenton didn't watch 1 second of the second act because I am such an incredible motivator. He stayed on his phone the entire time. Play concludes, 5-minute standing ovation. Kelly gets up and leaves, and I step out, and Trenton walks up to me this time, and he grabs me by the shoulders. He said, I just want to, thank you for talking to me. He said, you and your wife seem like really cool people. Now watch this. He's got 300 classmates and bandmates all around him, and nobody is talking to him. And I know this is not politically correct, but I just hugged him. I said, bro, you are such a great kid. Don't let this world convince you you're not. It was obvious he was uncomfortable with himself. And it was obvious that he was isolated. And what he didn't see is as I'm hugging him and I'm saying this by his ear, I look back behind him. 3 or 4 rows back, there are 2 or 3 of his teachers. And they're bawling. Not because of the play, but because they're watching me. And all of them at the same, it was like choreography. They all go. By the way, I'm this dude. I remembered where Trenton said he went to high school, and I went on the website, and I found the band director's email address, and I emailed the band director. Would you please tell Trenton that there are at least 2 people in Atlanta, Georgia, that think that he is amazing? And part of the reason it haunts me, it's the most powerful song in the play. Because if you know the story, it's this song called Great Expectations. And this was the line that I can't get over. Ponyboy is singing. He says, I've got great expectations torn between what is and what could be. It's hard to write the story when the story's writing me. We are living in a day where, students, if you're not careful, instead of you taking your gold and staying gold and using it for the purposes God gave you, you'll make an idol and choke on it. And adults all over the place will go, look how sad. And adults, I am convinced we will have to take some responsibility. Because They watched us do it. They watched us do it. Because, if I may, don't turn the gold God gave you into something that God never created you for. Because he's made you to be great. To not lower yourself. And every adult in the room, if you're here and you know you have, well, Stuart, I don't know if I can work with the next generation. Yes, you can. I don't know enough about the Bible. I'm scared I'm going to tell them to ask Moses into their heart. No, you know. All we need you to do is to give us all that you have. Why? Because the next generation, their faith is worth it. And every dad and mom in the room, your kids already know you're not perfect. But we can all go. It's time to stop making idols with the gold we've been given. Let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, here's what I ask for adults and teenagers alike. For the middle schooler who feels such an awkward time in life, the high schooler who has so many future decisions to make, the graduate who is both excited and nervous, and all of us as parents, grandparents, aunties and uncles, small group leaders, adults. We live in a time, Jesus, where we need you more than we ever have. You are our anchor. You hold. But would you teach us as adults to anchor ourselves to you and to take the gold that you have blessed us with and to use it for sacred purposes? Heavenly Father, would the most sacred purpose be the next generation for so many of us, especially for every parent? We do not have to know everything. We are free to doubt. We are grateful that our faith walks hand in hand with mystery and doubt. It is its purpose. But help us to learn a 3,000 plus year old lesson from a group of people who saw you do incredible things and still couldn't handle the silence, couldn't handle what's next. Help us to learn a lesson this morning. And as we think about that, may these next few minutes, as we think about and sing about the words of this song, may they be true of us.